Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Sabrina Paganoni, and we're just giving people a few seconds to join from the waiting room. And while we do that, we can go to the next slide. I see that people have joined from the waiting room, so welcome, everyone. This is our weekly update about the Healy ALS platform trial. Next slide. And tonight, to start, it's really my pleasure to introduce Sarah Heinzman from our Ohio State site. We've been really working closely with the entire team at Ohio State and Sarah in particular since the beginning of the trial. And so I'll let her introduce herself and really tell us more about her site before we provide some of our usual weekly updates. Sarah?
Hi everyone. Thank you so much, Sabrina, and thank you to the study team for inviting me here today. It's truly a pleasure to be able to speak to you all today, and I'm very happy to be here. So thank you so much for your time. If you could advance to the next slide, that would be really great. So I've been asked to talk briefly about myself, which is not one of my favorite topics, but I'll go through it. So I have been working at Ohio State for about 11 years, and all of that time with neuromuscular neurology in various roles. But most recently, I am a nurse practitioner in the ALS clinic, in the neuromuscular clinic, particularly with a focus in ALS. And I have 17 years of working in clinical research, and I've held multiple different roles in clinical research, including being a coordinator. So I know what it's like to be a coordinator for all those coordinators that might be out there. Research nurse, manager, and most recently, I'm super excited to say that I am a PI on my own trial now. So that's an exciting career move for me. I am the co-chair of the Healy ALS platform trial recruitment and retention committee with my friend and colleague, Catherine, whom I know that you all know very well. But I'm also a member of the Cure SMA Center Network Committee, and I'm a clinic coordinator for both the MDA and ALS clinics at OSU. I have maintained, even though I'm a nurse practitioner now, I've maintained my certification as a clinical research coordinator with the ACRP. But I had to include a little picture of my son down there. He's an avid hockey player. I'm a mom. And I just really enjoy water sports and gardening, reading, all that other sort of fun stuff. So, and if you could advance the next one. So I thought I'd just mention and give a shout out to the team at OSU. I really appreciate everybody's role at OSU in the multidisciplinary clinic as we care for our ALS patients. Dr. Kolb, we are led by Dr. Kolb. He is our program director, Dr. Quick. Both the physicians that see patients in the ALS clinic work very hard, and I am fortunate to work along with them. We're very lucky to have a licensed genetic counselor in our clinic, so Jennifer Rogenbuck, who also works very diligently to develop the guidelines for ALS testing, genetic testing, and Cheyenne Grove. She is the coordinator for the Healy platform trial. She's been with the trial for a while now, so Cheyenne does a really great job enrolling people in the trial and keeping things organized and going. So I really appreciate her very much. And Kanisha also recently joined the Healy team as well. But all these people really play a very big role in the care of our ALS patients. So I appreciate working with them, and I actually really like working with them too. So they're good people. And next slide. So integrating research into the clinic. So I actually really wanted to spend the majority of my time talking about this. I work really hard to make sure that every single ALS patient that I see in the clinic has at least an opportunity to talk about research. The top bullet point there is my catchphrase for my patients in the ALS clinic. I constantly, when I'm with them, I ask them, would you like to have a conversation about research? That is how I open up the conversation about research. And I do this almost at every clinic visit. I think that knowledge is power, and that the more that you know about research, the more that you know about where the science is going or where things are headed, the more you're able to participate or even change something in the future or be a part of a change. And that is why I like research so much. Some of the things that I like to discuss: what a clinical trial is for a patient that's newly diagnosed with ALS, that wants to participate in a clinical trial. They might not even know what a clinical trial is, or how clinical trials can potentially help. What's it like being in a clinical trial? I'm a clinical trial participant myself. I would not recommend enrolling into a clinical trial if I would not be willing to join that trial myself. So I really try very hard to make sure that I vet very well all the trials that I'm in, and that I know them very well, so that I am able to explain what it's like to be in a trial. Signing up for a clinical trial as well. And what if I decide that I want to quit being in a clinical trial? That's important too, because sometimes people don't want to finish the participation in it. I think it's also important to talk about who pays for a clinical trial and reimbursement for clinical trial participation too, for reimbursing people for their time, or compensating them, for their time. I also like to talk too about what the open studies are at OSU. As you can deduce from my participation in this call today, that we are open to recruitment for the Healing Platform trial at OSU. We are open with both regimens F and G, which is very exciting. But more or less, I really like to talk about just the science too, like where things are headed, where things have been. So 10 years ago, the studies that we were doing are different from those that we are doing now. And every single trial that has been done in the past informs a little bit more of what is going on in trials currently. So they build on it builds on itself. And even though some of the clinical trials in the past have been failures, it's important to note that we learn from our failures and are able to move forward with that. Could you advance to the next slide, please? All right, so here's the nitty gritty too, Allison, and I know you have asked me this before in the past, but I started making, I made a couple of years ago, well, actually several years ago, what I call a smart phrase in Epic. Epic is the EMR that we use at Ohio State, and I think many major medical systems use the same smart phrase too, but you've heard me talk about it before. It's 2.5 pages long at this point, which seems pretty daunting, particularly for a patient that comes in asking about research. But, and here's the but, this information can easily be updated. We have tried in the past to give out brochures, and it was just very difficult to keep that information current. What I like about this is I update this probably monthly, maybe even sometimes 2 times per month. As I get additional information, I will update this as I learn about new things, as science changes, as we get new research studies in, as things change or a study might close. I will update this for our patients. It is given to our patients in their after visit summary. And even if a person is not ready to hear information about research, I still put it in there. I tell them to fold it up, put it in their purse or pocket, and pull it out later when you're ready. And then bring any questions to me at your next clinic visit. I think that's really important. Do your research at home and come and help me with questions during your clinic visit. I'm happy to talk to you about anything that you would like to. And if I don't know the answer, I will look it up and get back to you. And that is what I usually try to do. If you could move on to the next slide. So a couple of points, and I always try to do this with my folks, is open and active listening. So that means that I spend most of my time making eye contact with my patients. I might spend a little bit of time typing in some notes so that I don't forget things later, but open and active listening, really trying to understand what a person is telling me and what their goals are. Goals and expectations, even for a clinical trial, I think that's really important to do. So both from a trial perspective and from a patient perspective, these have to align in order for a person to want to participate in a clinical trial and be in a clinical trial. And also, I'm going to be mindful of the ALS clock. So we all know what that is. Usually, a patient in some of the clinical trials in the past have historically had an exclusion criteria. These trials have had an exclusion criteria of disease onset. So 2 years. So participation has to be within 2 years of disease onset. The Healy trial is really special though, because it's 3. So it allows for, I think, some of that ambiguity that might come into the clinical diagnosis, which might prevent a person from participating in the clinical trial. So I'm always mindful of the ALS clock. And I want to hear a patient's story. I want to hear about what they noticed. What symptoms did they first notice? How, how things progress for them. That's important for me to learn and understand and help me get to know somebody. Can you advance to the next one? Okay, I thought I'd just spend just a moment too talking about if you're sitting out there and maybe you're wondering whether or not you want to participate in a clinical trial, but you're not really sure how to get started. One of the things that I would suggest is that you get some medical records from your neurologist's office. So maybe their latest clinic office notes that would include the most recent ALS-FRSR scores, any genetic test results, results of pulmonary function testing. If you've had an EMG in the past too, you might want to snag that. Get those things together. That's going to help facilitate your pathway into a clinical trial if that's what you should choose to do. And the next slide. So a couple of things to think about too, and really, really think about this before you join a trial, because we want you to be in a trial and stay in a trial. And I always want my trial patients to be happy. But think about how long the trial will last. Generally 26 weeks. So you're looking at like a 6-month commitment. Maybe that's too long for you. I'm not sure. So that's something to always think about. I always ask my patients too, what they know about the drug. Now, again, Healy, great trial because it's patient-centric and if you've attended more than one weekly webinar, you've attended sessions to talk about the medications, both F and G too, because there's been some nice sessions talking about the mechanism of action of those trials or those trial drugs, excuse me. I want to point out, I've had a couple of patients tell me that they really are not comfortable with IV or subcutaneous injection, and that is an important thing to mention. If you're not comfortable with whatever the route of administration for that drug, talk to your clinical research team about it. Talk to your doctor about it. And maybe there's another trial that might be more suited for you. Fortunately, I think for some folks, these, GNF or a more traditional route in terms of oral. I think some people might get a little squeamish sometimes with IV, but also commitments to the study. So time, length, and frequency of the visits and those tests that are required. Those are all the things that are important to consider when being part of a trial. Okay, and then the last slide. I think this is the last slide. Yeah. So I didn't want to go on too long, but I really like this saying. So one of my former patients gave me this, and I just really think it kind of embodies the idea and expression of an ALS patient. So thank you so much, and I appreciate your time. And I look forward to any questions or being part of the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I mean, it's fantastic to hear your experience. I know you have extensive experience. So for anyone who is in your area in Ohio and surrounding states, I think it would be great for them to contact your site if they're interested in participating. And thank you for sort of explaining the steps. It's really a step-by-step process to consider research, getting involved in a trial, and certainly the guidance of people like you is very much appreciated. I think that now, I know that some questions are coming in, but maybe I'll just give a very quick update. If you can go to the next slide. As you know, we are enrolling for FNG, as you said, 2 drugs, which are both oral, meaning that they can be taken by mouth. If you can go to the next slide. We are making great progress with activation. And you can see here, activation for F, next slide, and enrollment for G. Next slide. And so again, getting, improvement in terms of, activation of the sites and really enrollment. So we do still have spots. So feel free to contact your study team so that you can join. Next slide. And we do have an exciting science webinar coming up next week, so don't miss it. We had one for regimen F. We're gonna have one for regimen G next week. So please join us next week. Don't miss this one. Next slide. And as always, feel free to contact our patient navigation team for additional questions, as you can see on the slide. And now I'll turn it over to our patient navigation team. I know they received a few questions for you in advance, so you can ask those questions. So,
Thank you. Sarah, we did receive a couple of questions for you. The first one being, how do you help people who may be interested in clinical trials but do not qualify and they aren't eligible?
Yeah, okay, so great question. Just because you might not be eligible for a drug trial doesn't mean that you can't participate in other trials as well. So like basic science trials too. I know that most folks want to be in a drug trial. I do know that. I recognize that there are expanded access programs that are available. I am hoping, maybe my PIs, if they're out there listening, I am hoping that we will be participating in some of the EAPs coming up. But I don't want to scoff at or discount those basic science trials. Those are very important. You know, people that participated in Answer ALS, for example, that was not a drug trial, but that was a massive trial to help collect blood samples and really come up with lines, and they're really valuable and contributing to the science and forwarding things. So you can make a difference. You can make a difference. We have 2 basic science trials going on at Ohio State too. So not just participation in drug trials too, but other trials as well, as they're equally as important.
Thank you. And then we had one additional question that came in. I know we hear often when we talk to families that, you know, it's a very important decision to participate in clinical research, but not just the participant has to make that decision. There are impacts to the family as well. So can you talk a little bit about how you support the family through that decision?
Yeah, great question. The family is always part of that conversation. They show up, they get my eye contact. We get to talk about all of that stuff. I try really hard, and especially Cheyenne too. She's, I think she might be listening, so shout out to her. She does a great job. We have food trucks here. We really, you know, we're the Midwest, man. We try to like let you in and come in and be a part of the family, but that does include family members too. So moms, dads, sisters, brothers. I mean, when you're in the room, you're part of the family too. And I really make it a point to try to help them too. And I also recognize that sometimes caregivers really just need a break. If caregivers need a break, they're perfectly fine to excuse themselves, grab some lunch and come back. I'm happy to take care of an ALS patient, particularly the clinical patients as well as the research patients. I will spend however much time it needs. Sometimes I run behind in clinic because of that, but you know, I'm there for the long haul. So you know, I hope that you guys are too, but I try to really incorporate the family and pay attention to basic needs. Sometimes you get tired, sometimes you need breaks, and these are important things to note. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And that's all the questions I received for that, but I did also want to just thank you working with you on this trial. I know how above and beyond you go always for ALS families. So I wanted to let you know how appreciated you are.
Oh, I love working with you guys. The Healy trial, if I could say anything, the Healy trial is one of my favorite trials to work on. It's the most organized, the study team's the most responsive. There's never a question about, you know, if you have a need, people are responsive, and that makes the job so much easier. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And I should say we received a couple of nice comments from people again. I'm sure really your energy and commitment really is obvious, and that's why we invited you. That's why we love working with you. And I had to say, many people tell me that, you know, when they go to sites like yours where there is strong nursing and really people who can really be really partners in along the way, you know, that really makes a difference. So participation in the trial also comes with the bonus of sort of working with people like you. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
And again, thank you, Catherine, for posting in the chat ways to contact Sarah and the team at Ohio State. And as we always do, we like to also take your other questions about the trial in general. So I know a question that we received is, when are we going to have Regimen H? Well, we're actually working on it. We haven't formally announced it because we generally do some prep work before and only announce it when we have obtained some sort of like, contractual agreement and other other documents to know that that regimen will happen for sure. And so again, we're working through that. Hopefully we'll be able to announce regimen H soon. And in the meantime, we're also again enrolling for FNG. I think the science for FNG is incredibly exciting. And again, we really are focusing on enrollment for 2023 for these regimens. And hopefully we should be able to announce regimen H for 2024 very soon. Other questions that we have, let's see. And I just see positive comments to Sarah. So I think with that, Sarah, clearly the audience has sent a few comments of gratitude to you. So and with that, I'll give you the last word before we end the webinar.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate you guys. And if there's anybody else that's out there in the recruitment and retention committee, I want to say hello and thank you for your hard work. And I am looking forward to seeing you again because I haven't seen you in 2 months. So
thank you. And thank you everyone for listening. And we'll be back next week again. Exciting scientific webinar about regimen G with the scientists who actually developed the drug. So we'll see you all next week. Thank you.